Welcome everybody. I'm here interviewing Southern's most famous member, Bob Shearer. And we're just going to go over his golfing life at Southern, which has a period extending over 50 years. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Steve. Yes, it's probably trying to remember all these things from 50 years ago might be a bit of a problem, but we'll see how we go.
What was your introduction to golf, Bob?
Parents played golf at Brighton, and their brothers and sisters all lived up around Shepparton area. And I always remember Uncle Charlie. He was a member of Marupna and Shepparton. And Mum and Dad used to go up there nearly every weekend. What do we do with the kid? So he built cut down a little club for me, a left-hander like he was, and gave me a ball or two and said, follow us.
So your first club was a left-handed club?
Yep,
Bob?
yeah. Yeah, I played, I hit I'm trying to think, probably 7, 8 or 9, somewhere around about that. But then Dad did, I always remember him saying to me, Sir Donald Bradburn bats right-handed, so here's a right-handed club. And from then on, I played right-handed.
Okay. So on your trips up to the bush, Bob, when you came back to Melbourne, did you continue to play, or was it just restricted to your trips up to the bush in those days?
No, just restricted to them. They played at Brighton Golf Club, Brighton has a membership, but obviously it's a public course. But they have an old house down the end of the practice fairway that I think they still have it, that they bought or rented at the time, and that was the clubhouse. But not that I was going in there at that age. But so that's where it really started, after being up in Shepparton all the time. Yeah. But Mum and Dad, obviously playing with other people, didn't want the kid running around loose. Yeah.
And at what stage in all this, Bob, did you suddenly think, geez, I quite like this? Yeah,
it was quite a few years down the track, because I was more into football. Junior football and so forth, and then I don't know, I started playing golf, and actually it was with a guy called Gordon Anderson, whose mum and dad were founder members here at Southern. Right. And they were members of Brighton, and then they foundation members out here, and of course when Gordon got to 14 years of age, they put him in, and I was a year younger, so that's when I came here as well with him. Okay. But we were playing, Gordon and I were playing at Brighton. I do remember this. We used to, my dad fixed up a thing you hook on the back of your bike with your buggy, and we used to ride down the middle of Nepean Highway from Moorabbin to Brighton at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, hardly see a car, and put your ball in the race to go and play. Well, we used to put, I remember it was 9 shillings all day ticket, 36 holes and more if we could.
So round about 13 or 14 was when you started playing quite regularly?
I was playing regularly at Brighton, probably, I guess, from 11 and 12 and 13. But fortunately, when Gordon was a year older than me, and he obviously could join Southern, you had to be 14 to join. And because I played golf with him, his dad said, to heck with that. He told the powers to be here that his son needs to play with me, but I'm only 13, but he's going to be a member. Yeah. And the club did let that happen. So they started off really well, Southern.
So at some stage, I would think then shortly after that, Bob, you started to get very keen?
Yeah, we played every weekend.
Yeah.
I was playing, at that stage, still playing junior football, but that was usually in the mornings. Yeah. And then Dad would bring me here in the afternoon. So it was football in the morning.
So a pretty full Saturday, Bob?
It was, yeah. And then Sunday he'd bring me here in the mornings usually. Did
you get tutored early on, Bob? Was it a case of natural talent and somebody saying, wow, this kid's a bit of a chance here? Or did somebody get hold of you and teach you right to start with?
No, not really. Maybe my dad, in little ways, pointers here and there.
Yeah.
He was a left-hander, as I said, but not a great golfer.
No.
When I was 16, 18 handicapper, but no, not here. Not until I got a little bit better. Then they saw something, and Harold took over. Harold Knights.
Yeah, and of course
So that
that's
was
an infamous association. That.
Yeah, that was probably when I was in the late 14s, early 15s.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine Harold was quite a hard taskmaster, Bob. He's a pretty straightforward kind of a fella, Harold.
Unbeknownst to me at that time, Harold was or still is a great teacher.
Yeah.
He never changed kids.
No.
He saw the talent they had and just worked on that.
Yeah.
And saw any little problems they had, but basically tried to keep the swings they had, and they're there for a reason. He's looking at them, and they've got a bit of talent, and I think that was more same sort of deal with me. The only thing he did change, which was later, we'll get to that I suppose, but was that I learned, with the two-handed grip and being young, and sort of hit it with a big hook. And he did. I always remember him telling me, he said, "You won't get anywhere doing that, young fella."
He never wasted a word, did he?
No, he changed me around to hitting it the other way, if anything, and that stood well for me over the years.
So, your progress, Bob, how quick, what kind of timeline can we put on your progress?
It's difficult to talk about yourself, but it was pretty quick. My first handicap here was 21, and I was 14. I must say, when I first came here in 13, I'd never seen so many bunkers in all my life, because they had about 5 in Brighton, and you had to hit the worst shot ever to get in one. But Southern was basically like it is now, full of bunkers, you know, and I didn't know how to get out of them. It was, if no one's looking, pick it up and throw it. But no, my first handicap was 21. I think I was 14 by that stage. Well, they weren't going to give me a handicap when I was 13 because shouldn't have been here, sort of thing. But 21, and I think it's hard to remember, but it did go down to probably nearly single figures before I was 15, before the end of the year I was 14. That's from May onwards, I guess, a year of that. And by the end of 15 years old, I was on scratch.
Gee.
Looking at what happens with the kids these days, they seem to get the handicaps lower earlier, but maybe it takes them a bit longer to get to that, like scratch that I got to. Now, I can only put that down to very thankful that it was talent, and Harold had hold of me by then, because junior pennant was rearing its ugly head.
Yeah. Obviously there's a significantly higher level from scratch golf to the level that you got to, Bob. So when you got to scratch, did you continue to think to yourself, geez, I'm still improving here? The shots I can play now that add to my repertoire, etc., etc. Did you find that?
I don't think I was thinking that way at that time. I just loved the game. I gave up football, I gave up everything. And all I did at home, I was chipping it round the backyard. Dad cut one of the back lawns down to, probably ran at about 15 on the stent meter. And we had half a dozen holes in that, and that's all I did was putt around that. And then I got to the stage of hitting from across the road, on the nature strip across the road, over the house onto that green, and never put it through a window or anything. I couldn't do it now. I'd smash windows and tiles and you name it, but and we had a vacant block out the back of the house, and I was forever out there in the long grass and hitting shots, and I just for some reason loved it. And people still ask me, why do you play golf? And I love it, and I've got no reason to love it. I do.
It just gets in your blood.
Yeah.
So scratch before 16, basically. Pennant, was it junior pennant?
Yes.
Senior pennant?
Yeah. I must just say, I always remember to this day the first time I broke 80 here, and I had to par the last 6 holes. We were coming from across the road in those days.
Yeah.
And I had 6 holes to play, and they're possibly, in those days, probably the hardest 6 holes together that the golf course had. And I counted it down, and I got very nervous at the end, and finally parred the 18th and shot 79, and I think it was like, was it 3 months or 4 months before I went over that.
Right.
After that, that was
Okay.
a goal I had, and then once I got it, I went from
Yeah.
there on.
So a landmark achievement.
Yeah,
Bob.
I was on probably about 15 or 16 when I did it.
Wow.
So I think I won the comp with 40 bloody 4 points or something silly. But I'm not saying I didn't go over it after then, but it took me a long while.
Okay.
And that's probably part of the love of golf came in that area that time. But then obviously 16 and scratch and everything, pennant, junior pennant came in, and I can't remember what number I played the first game, but I moved middle of the pennant team, not 5 players in the juniors.
Yeah.
But, it's hard to be in the middle of 5, but 2 or 3 or 4 in that area, I think, with memory. But the next year after that, I played number 1 in the juniors, and it was either that year or the next year that they pulled me out after about 3 games to play number 7 in the seniors. Someone got ill or whatever, something happened, and I played, I think, 2 or 3 games at number 7 in the seniors, and I believe I won them all. I won 2 of them anyway. So, from that time then the next year I started in the seniors and finished number 1 in the seniors.
Okay, and that was at a time when pennant golf in Melbourne was an extremely competitive and popular golfing event.
And Southern Golf Club was the best. The first 2 years, not the first year I played senior, the next 2 years we won it. We won the Division 1.
Right.
And there was some very good players and very good teams.
And you know what, that's probably started the tradition that we've got with pennant golf, where Southern has probably punched above its weight.
Yeah, when we were the first sort of, how do you say it in a nice way, the non-toffee club.
I know what you mean,
That got to Division 1.
Yeah.
They were all Metropolitan, Commonwealth, Royal Melbourne,
Yeah.
Kingston Heath. And Southern got into the Division 1 and then started beating them. And for the want of a better word, we were like a Collingwood of pennant. Everybody loved to hate us, and they hated us even more. The people used to come. We used to have 200 members arrive on a Saturday in those days. Minimum 200 members to follow.
Gee.
And I think the other teams were, they'd look around and they were, oh my God, they'd never played in front of that many people.
Yeah.
And I think down the track, that helped me. I played number 1 pennant with that many people following that when in future years, galleries never worried me. I grew up with it, and I think all our boys, all our team grew up with that.
Yeah.
And it intimidated the other teams.
Can you remember the people who played with you in senior and junior pennant? Have you still got...
Not a lot in junior. Well, Doc Lucas, he was in the senior team when I got into junior, but he was he used to swap from 6 or 7 in the senior to number 1 in the juniors. I can remember all the senior blokes. There was myself, Harry McGain, Johnny Webb, Alan Toe, Les O'Shea, Tony Meikle, Jimmy Maher used to play a bit, Jimmy Black.
Wow.
We used to have a team that the highest handicap was scratch. A couple of times a bloke off 1 got in, but was... And I must say, in those days, scratch handicap was a scratch handicap.
And a real sense of camaraderie amongst the players, because I would think in those days they'd all be pretty much rusted on members of the club. So if they weren't playing pennant, you'd see them at the club on a regular basis.
That's something I've noticed over the years now. But we all played 52 weeks of the year here. And,
so they were your friends as well as your playing colleagues.
Yes, And I think our presidents and captains all got involved in the fact it was someone's house every Saturday night after the pennant. And, I can remember, they had at my house and the old man and said, what the hell with all these people coming in and drinking and doing all this and And he'd get up in the morning and there'd still be 6 of them lying on floors, and but we had to go early, usually every Sunday early, to the club we were playing at the next Sunday, for the next Saturday for practice. We used to allowed to go and practice on the course. No, the camaraderie was there.
So, how many years all up, Bob, in pennant did you have? How many years would you have played pennant for Southern in total? 5 or 6? Or something like that.
Yeah, because I turned pro in 1970, obviously, but so I got in the pennant team. It would have been, well, I was here 61, so yeah, it's 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
I think I only played 3, maybe 4 times in the seniors.
You played pennant golf?
Yeah.
Built up a formidable record at pennant golf.
Yeah, by that time, golf had got a little more serious with me than the early years. I think, it's hard to say, but I think deep down I knew I had some sort of talent because I was beating people that were supposedly very good.
Yeah.
And then that turning professional comes into your mind. But there was a couple of things different in those days. One, there wasn't a lot of money around to play for, and 2, you couldn't even say it.
Yeah.
Or you were in the middle. You weren't a pro and you weren't an amateur.
Yeah.
So you just had to keep your mouth shut.
So there's a fair bit of risk involved in it.
There was,
Bob?
yeah. Because people, and I wasn't the only one, people see the other players that were good and, you know, they're all asking the question, but you can't say anything about it. Or you're gone. And it was something, it was at least a year, or maybe they could give you 2 years out. You know, you were in that middle. And technically you couldn't be a member of the club. You know, the golf club, if you were at Metropolitan or Royal Melbourne, I think they would have flicked you straight away.
Gee.
Because you weren't an amateur, you weren't a pro.
Yeah, those were in the days, weren't they, where professionals weren't looked at
no.
in quite the same way that they looked at now. They were almost the enemy, weren't they?
Some of them, sometimes, well, it happened to me when I turned pro, you weren't allowed in the clubhouse.
So that was 1970, Bob?
I turned pro, that was... I actually turned pro in 1969, but obviously going what we're just saying, nobody knew. And it was after the Australian Open at Kingston Heath, and I couldn't sign with Harold because he had his assistant at that time, but his assistant was finishing his time in, I think it was about March in 1970. So I had from, what was it, November to March, knowing what I was doing, what I'd done, I couldn't tell anybody.
Wow. So
the captain of Southern then was David Allen. So I had to go, because pennant practice comes around in January, you know, so I had to go to him and tell him what the deal was. And to his credit, he said, "We won't tell anybody." He said, "I can put you against anybody I want now in the practice just to see how they perform."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, we're not saying anything." So, you know, I got a longer membership out of it, but we did that. And then he announced it after the final pennant practice game, and announced at the same time that I was going to work for Harold. And while I was working for Harold, I had the run of the golf course. And when I finished, he said, "I'm making sure you'll become an honorary member." So that was all down the track, right from the time I'd signed on and I had to sign with Dennis Lucy from Albert Park.
Okay.
Who I never worked for a day, not one day. I went and saw him 2 or 3 times, and all it was to go to his snooker club in Queen's Road and drink beer and play snooker. That was all I did with him.
Wow. Can you remember your first pro comp, Bob?
Yeah, well, I had to play. I couldn't go in the tournaments. That was a rule they had.
Right.
PGA, I wasn't a Class A trainee or whatever they call. And the first 12 months I couldn't take any prize money in Pro-Ams. I think I won 11 Pro-Ams, but didn't...
And got $1 out of it?
No, I got some good trophies though, I must admit. A couple of the pros that won first prize tried to swap the money for the trophy, so that, not being as all that silly, I knew the trophy must be worth more.
And you've still got those trophies, Bob?
Got a lot of them. Got I won a set of a cutlery set Sunshine Open it was, two rounds. Peter Mills tried to give me his cheque, $250 he won, and we've still got the cutlery set, and it's solid silver. I mean, it's probably, I don't know what it's worth, but it was worth quite a bit of money then, apparently.
Wow.
So, but some only gave you a club tie or something like that, you know.
So you were restricted to basically the pro-ams, and you couldn't get any money out of that, and that was
No Australian Opens or
no, nothing like that.
State Opens or
Okay.
PGAs. You couldn't win that for 12 months.
So that 12 months period finished, Bob, and then you were on the full circuit, so to speak.
Yeah, I can't remember what happens there, whether I had to go and pre-qualify in tournaments or what, but it's around about that time that Stewie Ginn, Ian Stanley and myself said we've had enough of this, because we all turned pro about the same time. We're all going through the same thing. And we said, let's the heck with this, we'll go to England, see how we go.
Right.
So we took off there, and all we had to do was pay the 25 quid or whatever it was, and we were members of the British PGA.
Right.
Because at that time we were Class A trainees here, so we could join. So I think I spent 4 months over there, and when I came home, I was now exempt because I was a British PGA member.
Gee,
I don't think they liked it all that much here, but
So that's probably a bit contrary to what people's general belief would be, that the British PGA in those days would probably be a bit blazer and tie and
oh yeah,
all boy
Yeah.
network, where the general understanding would be that the Australian PGA would be a bit looser and a bit less restrictive, and in fact it was actually the other way around.
yeah. See, this British PGA was like the Australian PGA. They ran the tournaments. As now they've got the British PGA, and the European Tour is
Yeah.
an entity on itself, same as here with the tour.
Yeah.
But so John, their rules, Class A professionals from trainees or professionals from Australia could join. So we joined.
So you were in the UK for 4 or 5 months.
About 4 months, I think. Yeah.
Did you share accommodation with Ian Stanley and Stuart
Yeah,
Ginn? You all bunked in together, so to speak.
Ian Stanley knew David Haynes from Huntingdale, and David Haynes had a car auction in Farnborough, just out of London.
Yeah.
And so he said, we went along and bought like a transit van,
Yeah.
but obviously his people were bidding for it, and if it was too high, it was passed in, and they'd bring it around the next day. And we I don't know, I can't remember, it wouldn't have been more than a couple hundred quid, I wouldn't think we paid for that, but we ran that into the ground, let me tell you, and got our 200 quid back in 4 or 5 months or whatever it was, and came home. All we left in that, when we left, was probably 25 to 30 parking tickets and speeding tickets and things like that in the glove box.
Let somebody else take care of that.
Yeah,
Thanks,
they
somebody.
would have found them and found, where are those blokes?
So did you win any prize money over there, Bob, in that
Yeah,
period
but
of
there
time?
wasn't a lot there
No.
either. But it was very cheap to get around too. You know, you could get a guest house room for 50 cents or 50p a night, on a pound or something like that. You know, but I won a few pounds the first
Yeah.
year.
So
Nothing. Got by.
So you came back to Australia.
That
and
was
then-
1972. I back to Australia, and the time I'm pretty sure it was 4 months, and I was still Harold's assistant.
Yeah.
And being very unfortunate, the day I arrived back and came to work was the day they had the Captains and Presidents Day, pros and
Yeah.
Captain's Day or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Pros and Captain's Day at Southern. So I've walked out of the pro shop and bumped straight into Alan Heil, who's the president of the Victorian PGA. And he said to me, "Been here long, Bob?" And I thought, immediately knew that he's going to say something about me being away. Because the funny thing was, Harold used to pay me, but he would pay me $50, and then he had to put, I don't know, $6 or $7 in a tax stamp book, and he religiously, the time I was away, put $50 in that went under the carpet in the pro shop every week and filled in the tax stamp book. So Alan Hole took it a bit further, that I'd been away playing and doing all that. I said, no, I've been here working for Harold. He sends me away on to learn more things every now and then. And he took it a little bit further. Well, Harold got involved, and Harold produced a tax book. And, well, he didn't have to produce the money because it was cash. But
so that's at some risk to Harold himself, really?
yeah, it was, yeah. But, I mean, they knew exactly where Stanley, Ginn and I were. I mean, you got it written up in the paper if you had 71 in a tournament or whatever, or you were leading or whatever, something. So they knew it wasn't Australia, it was in England. So, but that got by that one. They were all old rules that we had no idea about, and all we wanted to do was play golf.
Yeah, I mean, really, golf was in the dark ages, wasn't it, in those days?
It was,
in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, if we talk about pros, I remember playing down at Westwood Ho, down south. J.H. Taylor's.
Absolutely.
Where he came from. And we played, it was a martini tournament, and I had a member that caddied for me. And when we finished each day, he could go in the clubhouse and have a drink, and I wasn't allowed in there. And I know Ian Stanley and I asked, maybe might have been the weekend or one day anyway, they had a J.H. Taylor room with all the memorabilia over the years of what he'd won and done and so forth. And we had to go to the manager, or secretary as they called him over there. Could we go into the room and just have a look? You have 10 minutes, boys. You need half a day to see what's in there, to read it and take it in, and he got 10 minutes.
And the watch starts
and
now.
I tell you what, that's all we got.
Gee.
So I since have been in there and seen it. So,
good,
but that was what it was like.
Would it have been that trip? Did you meet Kathy on that trip?
No, that was 72.
Okay.
So next year was...
So you came back to Australia and played fully fledged pro, and you could enter the professional.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think, yes, I did. Early, it was in those days. I think it was the top 60 or something like that. And it was pre-qualifying, so there was some I got in and some I didn't get in. And I think if you made the cut in the tournament, you were exempt for the next week. Something, there was some sort of deal like that. Okay. I know the first tournament I played was in. I get it mixed up. It was either Coffs Harbour or Victor Harbour.
Yeah.
And I think it was in Adelaide, the Victor Harbour, and then we drove to Coffs Harbour. I mean, it's just the roads weren't like they are now either, I can tell you.
No, just 2,000 or 3,000 k's in that one.
Yes, and the tour was quite big, but not a lot of money, obviously.
Yeah. And you'd know this within yourself. Could you see continuing improvement in your game?
Yeah, I think the first, and I hate to say it, but I think the first couple of years it was more fun than anything. We were into new places, and we thought, how good's this? We're not. This is a job, this is not a job. This is just fun. You chase a few girls, and have a few beers, having a good time. But by 73, I can't speak for the others, but I suddenly thought, you see the better players and they're not doing that. So what are you going to do? You either got to carry on like that and go nowhere, or give it your best shot.
So knuckle down.
I slowly knuckled down. I can't say I just cut it straight off and went that way, but that was my ambition.
So you played the Australian tour. Did that mean, Bob, then, that you'd play the Australian tour in the Australian summer and then every year go to Europe after that? Is that what you did?
Yeah, well, I went back to
England.
I presume I'd done enough to be exempt over there.
Yeah.
It's that long ago. There was pre-qualifying over there, but I don't ever remember pre-qualifying. So I must have got enough whatever small amount it was, enough to be in the top whatever, to be exempt in 73. In fact, I think the three of us did, because none of us were qualifying. You had to qualify for the Open, that sort of thing, but no. So back there in 73, that's when I met Kathy down in Bournemouth in 73.
Okay.
It was what they called the Summary Four-Ball. It was a four-ball professional tournament. So I was playing with Stanley, obviously, and they had the British Hardcourt Tennis Championships on in Bournemouth as well, and there was quite a few of the young Australian blokes that we knew through sport that were tennis players, and when we finished playing we'd go to the tennis and vice versa, and that's where Kathy was working with then Jackie Butterworth, who's now Jackie Newton. So she was Kathy's boss.
Right.
Cigarette Girls.
Yeah, the Piccadilly Girls.
Piccadilly, yeah.
Vague memories.
Piccadilly was golf, Dunhill was sailing.
Yeah.
And Rothmans was...
Bikes or something, was it?
Yeah, something.
Yeah, okay.
And I think Piccadilly was tennis as well.
So it was 12 months of the year.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah, and there wouldn't have been much or many events in Europe in those days, Bob, would there? It would have been predominantly British Isles.
Golf, funny, we went the odd time, like the French Open or something, 3 men and a dog. And the ones that did come had more jewellery and gold flashing around. I mean, they didn't play golf. The average people didn't play golf in Europe.
It was unknown, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a rich man's sport, I suppose, at that time. So they didn't have professional tournaments, no.
So round the British Isles, back to Australia.
But I do think in the middle, they were getting more.
Yeah.
The time, 72, I don't know what many, but there was a couple more in 73.
It would have been the Spanish who
yeah.
drove the continental.
There was hardly any European players on the tour. A bloke I do remember, Donald Swalens was the fella that first sort of came from Europe. He was Belgium. And he was an amazing player. He spoke 6 languages. So wherever we went, we stuck right with him. Because it didn't matter where you went, he knew the language. So, but he was a lovely bloke and a pretty good player, actually. And I think he was I don't know officially, but he was the first one we met. So you'd think he was probably the bloke that started Europeans having a crack at professional golf.
There was nowhere near the interest level, was there, in those days, from the general community towards golf tournaments that there is now.
No.
I mean, if you put it on TV, you'd have 5 people watching it.
TV, what's that?
Yeah, that's right, the old black and white days.
No.
At some stage, late 70s, Bob, would that be, when did your mind turn to, let's have a bit of a look at America? And this
75.
75, was it? Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking again, they used to have 2 tour schools in those days, in June and November. Only reason I didn't go in 75, I wasn't playing all that well. And I thought, this is the big deal. I've got to have the game pretty right if I'm going there to have a crack, because it was, I don't know, there was nearly 500 entrants and there was 6 rounds of golf. They cut after 2, and they cut after 4. Yeah, they had 3 cuts.
Pretty intense.
Yeah, so in 76 was when I actually got Jack Nicklaus gave me an invitation to play at his first memorial tournament, 1976. So I said to Kathy, the tour school was 2 weeks later after that down in South Carolina. So I said to her, right, we're going, we've got Jack Nicklaus has invited us, we're going. So we went there and then went down to Myrtle Beach and rented a little condominium at the golf club I was playing at. So I had 2 weeks there, so I had plenty of practice and got to know the pro really well. He was a sort of same age as me and good fella. And we did a bit of fishing and a couple of drinks here and there, and he showed me around the 2 courses we were playing. It started from there. I mean, I missed a 3-foot putt at the last hole on the Sunday to be outright winner
Right.
I tied a bloke called Woody Blackburn. Who
Okay.
you've heard of him?
Yeah, I certainly have. Yeah, right, Bob.
Oh, Woody, yeah.
So, and was the prize money for that in the qualifying?
Yeah,
Okay.
not a whole lot.
No.
But then you had to go 3 days to the school, and that was at the Hilton Hotel, but there was only 15 players got their card out of the 485 people, I think. And so they had an odd number in this, if they want to put you in 4s or 2s in the schooling thing, which I'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
But I said to Kathy, schooling? I didn't do this to go to school. Anyway, they called her in because to make up to 16, so they put her in. Anyway, so it was all these funny things, like they'd have people come in, I'm going a bit backwards here, but they had a bloke called Wally Armstrong came in to talk on where to stay and how to get around on the tour. And I'm sitting with Kathy, I said, I've never heard of this Wally Armstrong. Who the hell's Wally Armstrong? So he got the tour book out and he finished 60th on the money list the year before, it was the top 60 to qualify. And I said, have a look at that. He's won, I don't know, 52,000 or something like that for the year. I said, I've won twice that amount, and he's telling me where to stay and where to go and all that. I said, I'm out. While he's talking, I'll go out. She said, you can't do that. Anyway, he started talking, and when he started to talk, they started to filter out, these other blokes.
Okay. So you're on safe ground walking out, well.
Yeah, so I went out, and in the end there was only 2 people in there, because then he did, and I'm not religious, but I respect it. But he started banging the table saying God's going to be with you and everything, and that's when people started to go. But 2 people left. One was Kathy, and the other bloke was Sam Farlow, who was asleep. But we went through 3 days of that. Craig Stadler never passed. They finally he gave him his card, I think. But they had this first thing was that Mr. Brown, Smith or Jones got up at 7:30 or 8, got in his blue car, red car, and went to work, and took all this, and you got half a point for a correct answer. Well, Craig Stadler got half a point. He got up at 7 o'clock. Didn't get any others right. It was probably good fun. And when it came to do the exam, there was 12 questions. So they put the paper out, and I went through the paper, and I just don't know. And then I did answer one question, I can't remember. I put 11 don't knows and answered one. Because if you hadn't gone to school in America, it was a lot about colleges and campus and what you've got and all this. I'd been a professional golfer. I mean, I'd been going around the world playing. So I just said, don't know. Anyway, I obviously first out, wasn't I? And I handed the paper in, and the bloke, you may have heard, got Dr. Gary Wyron. He was a tour man. He was probably the first of the start of all these gurus on tour,
Yeah.
But I handed it in, he sort of looked at me when I handed it in, and he said, go and get a cup of coffee, Bob, and sit down there. Then in wouldn't even be a minute, he called me over, and he said, very well done. Yeah, and gave it a tick.
Did he?
Yeah, well, I mean, he knew that if you're not American, they were American questions.
Because there was a bit of publicity around in those days that the Americans weren't that keen on non-Americans joining the PGA Tour. Do you think maybe that some of those questions were maybe a little bit aimed at that kind of perception?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But the first part of that question is exactly right.
Yeah.
They didn't like foreigners.
No,
they hated them. In fact, if you did any good in a tournament, they'd say we were taking their money. I've got to say that the people that were on there were accepted, and when I got on the tour, there was only Bruce Crampton, Bruce Devlin and David Graham playing. They were the only, and they'd been there quite a while at that stage, and they were all good blokes and accepted. And
that's interesting about Bruce Crampton
Yeah,
David
I
Graham
think
because
Bruce
of-
Crampton was accepted because of his ability straight away.
Yeah.
But he wasn't the nicest bloke in the world.
You heard stories or read stories about that a little bit
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah. David Graham was the best person for me. They helped
Right.
Kathy and I more than any one person. And the second one, well, Devlin and I knew him anyway, but
Yeah.
he's like a mate. But
Yeah,
Crampton also tried to take me under his wing, but I couldn't handle it. He'd go take you for a practice round in a tournament, and it'd be 7 hours out there while all you're watching is him chip around greens and putt and do all. And the only thing he didn't practice was abuse to marshals, which he was very good at. No, but that's...
yeah,
I accepted that. I knew it was going to happen, and I think the Americans also take the person for what they are. There was a few blokes that got on, not Australians, but other
yeah.
foreigners that they didn't like, but they weren't very nice anyway. They weren't held very highly. But if you sort of went along with what they said, at the end of the day, they used to say, "Well played," you know.
So you were acclimatised quite well by the sound of it to the American conditions.
Really only because of, you know, David Graham and Devlin and Kathy.
Yeah.
Travelling with someone is just all important. We travelled, well, we didn't have to, but Dale Hayes from South Africa was there, and he was on his own, and he was having a nightmare over there.
Okay.
In fact, he only lasted 2 years. He said, "To hell with this," and got off. But he was on his own. He couldn't. There was no other South Africans other than player, but he didn't play all the time and travel in cars and buses and trains.
Slightly different level.
Yeah.
So, how many years would you have been on the American circuit, Bob? You won a tournament over there, didn't you?
I played 9 seasons.
If the memory served me right, was it the Tallahassee?
Yeah, Tallahassee Open. It wasn't a major tournament, but it was on the tour. And if you won that, you got into the Tournament of Champions the next year. So you actually never defended the Tallahassee Open.
Okay.
Tournament Champions was the same week.
Right.
Which people say, well, that took all the good players away from Tallahassee Open. But I went down the last few holes with Hal Sutton, who is now a major champion winner, and a couple of, I can't think of it, a couple of other blokes that now I would have thought, crikey, you know. They were, what are they doing playing in the Tallahassee Open sort of thing. But if you hadn't won a tournament the year before, you played there.
You played the Masters, Bob?
4 times.
What's your memories of that tournament?
Absolutely scared the first time, driving in there and not knowing what to do or anything. And the Wednesday before, and I went down there and didn't know you had to have, like everywhere on the tour, the range balls are there. I go to Augusta and you got to take your own. Didn't have any. And I was talking to, I guess, the pro in the pro shop, and, you know, about range balls, and he was telling me you can't, you know, well, I knew you couldn't bring your caddy, they allocate you a caddy, and he was going through that, and there was a certain person that was standing in the pro shop that heard all this and came up to the pro and said, "I'll fix with the practice balls," and I turned around, it was Jack Nicklaus.
Is that right?
Yeah, because I'd played a fair bit with him here in Australia.
Yeah.
This was 1976. He'd been in Australia every year for the Open. When I was the Australian Amateur Champion, I played with him. I always put him with him. So, I could say I knew him, but and he didn't have to do that, but he did. And then said to me, "Have you got a game?" So the first person I ever played at Augusta with was Jack Nicklaus. And, I mean,
what was it?
I don't think I was as nervous on the first round on the first tee as I was on that Wednesday.
Wow. So, Nicklaus's game, Bob, what was it about it? What was it that was so good about Nicklaus? Just solid play and never any mental mistakes?
No, he never missed a shot. The sound and the way they flew was different to everybody else. He definitely had that 20 or 30 yards, or metres or whatever you want to call it, extra when he needed it, off the tee. If it's a longer par 4 or particularly par 5, all of a sudden you're driving the ball up next to him, and next minute you're 40 yards behind him, you know, and you've hit possibly a better one, you know.
Yeah.
but he was, people, I guess they used to say he wasn't a good bunker player. Of course he wasn't, he never went in them.
Yeah.
So it was, but he wasn't bad. And and they talked about his putting, but at that time, I mean, if you've got 15 birdie putts, you're not going to make them all. Say 15 20-footers or 15.
He always got them when he had to, didn't he?
Yeah,
more
but
often
he
than
had
not.
more chances to get them. So if he gets 6 of those 15, he's 6 under. So he's had a good round. But he was just, and to go along with that, just a lovely bloke. To play with, he was fantastic.
So 76 was your first Masters, Bob, and that was the year that Ray Floyd won.
Yeah, you're right there. I think we'd be sure of winning Taslotto, we'd be okay.
Did you, out of the 4 times that you played, did you make the cut on?
Yeah, I missed the cut the first year, that's 76, but I got an invite for 77. I think they used to invite the first timers back because they say you got scared or, the first time, but because I hadn't done anything that says you qualified for it, but I got back. 77 I made the cut, didn't finish I think it was about the top 24 in those days you got back, but I didn't, no. One year I was doing very well, but I got in the record books because of something I didn't do well.
Okay.
But and that was either 77 or 79. I actually hit the lead at Amen Corner on the par 3 and went over onto the 13th and hit a good drive just around the corner, and I had a shot at the green, and then I had another shot at the green and another shot at the green and another shot at the green. I don't know how many about, but I had 10. So that fixed that deal. But what that does is they've all sorts of records in their book, Augusta, and one is the worst score on every hole.
Yeah.
And that stayed there for 2 years, and then Tom Weiskopf had 13 on the 13th. So
Good old Tom.
That took my name out of the book.
As putting on those Augusta greens as scary as it looks?
Yes. Yeah. They're, I played on those, when I played them first, they were Bermuda, and that was the old Bermuda of the early days, not the good stuff they've got now. But it was hard and fast.
Right.
You couldn't stop the ball on them, and pretty fast, as fast as you'd ever get Bermuda. But then the last, I think, 2 times, 79 and 83 when I played, they were bent. And they were, say, like Royal Melbourne or our greens here on tournament courses, but they've got a lot more slope on them. So, I mean, the stint meter they have, it would probably roll 12 foot uphill and go 40 foot downhill. You'll find the blokes that win are putting the ball in mostly in the right place. They're
underneath
trying
the cup.
Yeah, underneath it, which is, I won a couple of times down at Royal Melbourne, and you have to try and do that down there in the early days when the greens were really like a road and fast. You just had to try and have uphill putts. You couldn't keep the others on the green.
I mean, that's the interesting thing in Melbourne. Some of those tournament greens, particularly at Royal Melbourne, it's hard to imagine that the Augusta greens could be any more difficult.
Well, they're not.
No.
But they're more. They've got more slope on them, on a lot of them, and I think the thing is there that I found. Maybe not in 83 because they used to change all the grasses every year. But now they've gone to these new hybrid type grasses or whatever. I always found the fairways, the ball sat down a little bit in the fairway, so to get spin on the shot was very difficult, which made the greens firmer. Because you couldn't stop them. But now you notice, you see them hit in and
there's a bit of spin.
They can spin them back and do all that sort of stuff. So that's telling me that the fairways they've got now are more tight knit. Like our Santa Ana or something like that.
So your last Masters was 83. Bob. Now that was the one that Ballesteros would have won, wasn't it? 83. I think he won 83.
Give me all these hard questions. I don't know. All I know is that I didn't.
No. So you would have played with Ballesteros a few times, Bob. How did you find?
I played with him. Well, in Europe, I didn't play any times in the States with him.
No.
We actually played, and I can't quite think that the guy was that we played with. It was in Germany when he first came out. It was one of his first tournaments. And it was, I don't know, he was probably only about 16 or 17 or something like that. And he was, you know, flailing at miles all over, and he was carrying a little pencil bag. And he had a temper on him. He was, you know, tossing clubs and banging them down and everything. And on one, I remember it was a par 5, and he hit his second shot under low-hanging trees, just off the fairway. And we heard him in there scrambling around, and went crash, 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 and then the ball shot out. And he came out, and he was red, you know, and he walked straight over to his little bag lying on the ground and slammed his club into the bag on, you know, the side. So we play out that hole, and it's on the green and 2 putts, and we go to the next tee, and he pulls out his driver, and right in the middle of the grip, it's just broken and it's sagging, you know, in the grip, and he's looked at us as if to say, what happened here? What happened here? And the bloke we were playing with, who I can't think who it was, I got him in my mind. He was a Scotsman, Ronnie Shade. That's who it was. Just said to him, "Last hole, pal." He said, "Smash down on the clubs." He said, "Have a check and see how many others you got there." And he had another 4 that had been snapped.
So 4 Masters over the 7 or 8 years, Bob. And I would think what an experience that is. So would you have stayed in America for comps prior to and after the Masters in those days? All year? You had a season length?
Yeah. In hindsight's a great thing, I guess, but in hindsight I would have, if I did it again, those 9 years, I'd be playing more on the tour. Maybe not, because of the money they make now, you don't have to. But one of the reasons I didn't play more was our tour was pretty strong here, and I always felt I should support the home tour, so we played January, February a lot, and then, you know, started in October. So at some stage between there, I'm in America, and I've got to have some sort of break, because, and having said that, I think us golfers of that era, we played more than they played now. You know, I used to average nearly, probably over 40 tournaments a year. So, you know, sometimes I've played 45, so that you haven't got a lot of time left after that.
No, almost one a week.
Yeah, and so like the old story was that, you know, how you're playing, and Johnny Miller said, well, when I'm hitting my driver well, I'm not hitting my irons good, and I'm not putting so well. They said, oh, he said, yeah, but when I hit my irons well, I don't hit the driver well, and I still don't putt well. He said, but then when I putted well, I didn't hit the driver well, He said, and when I got it all right, there wasn't a tournament to play in.
And when he got it right, Johnny Miller, he had some streaks, didn't he?
Yeah, I was unsure. He was just before me. He was in the late 60s, early 70s, where he went nuts in Arizona and out west there. Shoot 63 every week, every day.
Graham Marsh should have been there over there around about the same time.
Yeah, Marshy got on, Jack Newton got his card in 77. I think Marsh got it the same year.
And I think he was Rookie of the Year, wasn't he?
Yeah, Marsh won at Heritage, I always remember that.
So 8 or 9 years in America. What was your last year over there?
84.
84, okay.
There's a lot of hindsight comes into that one too.
That was the year, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter Thompson won a stack on when the Seniors Tour was just in its infancy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Didn't he
it was
have a
around
year
that
there when he
time.
won
Around
about
that
7 or
time,
8?
yeah. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of talk about Seniors Tour, and not on the regular tour anyway.
No.
But
so the peak of your career, out of the standard of your play, Bob, what do you think you were best at? Was it your overall consistency with every club, or was there one strength and any weakness that you look back on now and think?
Yeah, well, it was in the middle of the time I was over there was when they brought out these stats, and for anybody that says this, you know, it's rubbish or not, it isn't. If you're playing for your living, you can work out where your weaknesses or your strengths are with that, and that's where I found what I thought was about 1980 80 or 81. I thought I was, the putting wasn't great. The putting was below the average, not below the tour average, but I mean, you have a look now, the guys that are up there are averaging around 28 to not 30, under 30.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, I was averaging around 30, 31, something like that. So I thought I've got to improve that. So that's the putting, but I was reasonable in all the others and probably strong in driving. That I hit, that was my biggest strength, was I got it on fairways. And fortunately in those days I used to give it a fair hit. When I went over there I found I was well above average off the tee. Obviously you had the long hitters, Jim Dent and that, he had it on, he had graphite arms, and that sort of stuff. We all used to joke about it, but he's the only bloke I know to this day that when they first brought out metalwoods, and it was tailor-made, it's not a TV ad or anything, but they were just those little metal woods, and it was at Greensboro, and they brought them out and got all the pros to try them out on the fairway. And about the third hit he had with one, it exploded, and there was a 6-foot bubble of foam. So they obviously put foam in there to compress it or whatever they did. And all this foam came out, and it was 6 foot high. Big bubble. It was just like shaving cream. So he split the driver with his strength. But
so once you'd analysed that you had to improve your putting, did you actually manage to improve it, Bob?
Yes, I around about that time was when I'd gone cross-handed. And there was quite a few blokes on the tour out there doing it, and they were sort of ridiculed, cross-handed, why are you doing that? And there was a bloke like Bruce Litsky that grew up that way. When he was a kid, he grabbed the putter that way and he'd never changed. But then when he got on the tour, they said something wrong with him. He's got the yips or something. He's cross-handed. I've been through the yips and all that, but at the time I didn't have the yips, but I wasn't making any putts. So I just changed my hands and it felt right. And I think that may be going all the way back to when my dad changed me from left-handed to right-handed. It felt comfortable. So I've putted that way ever since.
And it was the year after that, so say that was 81. The year after that, of course, you won the Australian Open.
82 was my best year. Won the Australian Open, won the New South Wales Open, won the Tallahassee Open. So I had 2 years in early times that I won 4 tournaments in a year, but not the ones, not those ones.
And the Australian Open, when you entered the comp, Bob, were you feeling confident?
No, we'd played in the Gold Coast at Tweed Heads the week before, Payne Stewart actually won it. And Kathy and I were flying down to Sydney on the Monday, and stopping in Sydney. Obviously, she was going on to Melbourne. She wasn't staying in Sydney for that week. And I just said to her, I'll see you Friday. She said, what do you mean? I said, I hate that Australian golf course. I'll be home Friday night. I got home Sunday night with the cup.
It just shows you, doesn't it? You just never know, do you?
You never know, but one thing that was very important in that week was I played with Nicholas the first 2 days, and you just don't want to make a fool of yourself. So you're probably maybe nervous, but you're more relaxed in a funny way. You just sort of saying, well, I've just got to hit it right and just relax and hit it,
Where did he finish in that?
Second.
Second, So you held off one of the greats, Bob.
Yeah, well, I played with him the last day as well.
Gee.
So, some people have said to me over the years, said that you played with him the first 2 days and the last day. Wasn't he good enough to have a game with you on Saturday? And he definitely was good enough, but that, to do the 2 to start with and then the last, that sort of, as I said, made me nervous, but relaxed me maybe a bit more. That I wasn't trying to out-hit anybody. I was saying, don't make a fool of yourself. And you just relax. And I still got the tape of the 4 days, and there's not many times I've swung that good for 4 days, and just about every iron shot I've got on tape, I wish I could do that now.
So just in a groove, Bob.
Yeah, yeah. Only once before have I been like that, really, in that total groove, and I was longer. That was the year I won the Australian Amateur at Royal Adelaide. I mean, there was nobody taking movies of that or TV of that, but it was, I know I'd never hit the ball like that.
So are there any other winners of the Amateur and the Open, the Australian Amateur Open and the Australian Open? Is there any other people?
Yes,
yeah. Aaron Badley, has he won?
Yeah. There's, I think when I did it, there was 7. I was the 7th.
Okay.
That had won the Amateur and the Open, but I'm not sure how many that had won the Amateur, the Open, and the PGA.
Yeah.
Australian PGA.
Right.
There's not that many that have done that one. And I actually held the Australian Open and Australian PGA in the 1 year, 1 calendar year.
And you were longer as an amateur, Bob, you were saying. Have I got that right? You were longer off the tee as an amateur than you were as a pro?
No, I was still long as a pro, but I wasn't, I was above average. So,
Yeah, and that's with the old Persimmon.
If you've got the top 10 best, longest drivers, I'm in the next 10.
Yeah, okay.
So,
and that's with the old Persimmon heading.
Yeah,
woods.
yes.
So did you ever switch to the metal clubs, Bob, in your pro career?
Yes.
Or did you? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
In that later years.
I'm
when
not
they
that
came
old, Cleggy.
We'll go on to something else quickly.
No, I remember where I first used the metal woods, when they'd sort of got them out a bit better at that stage. That was,
they weren't exploding.
I played in the Dutch Open, and what I found was that you couldn't manoeuvre the ball as much.
Yeah.
If you wanted to hit a right to left shot off, with a 3-wood or a 5-wood off the fairway, it was harder to do that, or left to right. It was harder to do that because I think the ball came off the face quicker than the Persimmon woods. But it was harder to, if it was heading into the left-hand trees, it wasn't going to fade back.
Yeah.
But
so you couldn't shape it as much.
No. I'm obviously perfected all that, but they were still the same size as all the wooden woods at the same time.
Okay, so a lot smaller heads than what you see.
And people didn't like them. Not many. I tried them in the Dutch Open and went back to the other ones.
Okay.
Because I felt I hit the driver further, but I didn't have the control over it. But they started to get a little bit bigger, and technology took over.
Evolved to where they are today.
Yeah.
So, mid-80s, Bob, when did your pro career start winding down?
I played as long as I could, up until when I was 50, and I was still playing a bit on our tour here. Not great. I mean, I see these older guys now, and you taper off and you hate it.
Yeah.
You absolutely hate it,
Yeah.
but you can't do anything about it. And you can even notice the guys that practice every day and they're going to the gym and they're doing it, they still taper. You cannot stop that old age stuff. But I could still give it a whack when I was 50. I played till I played on the European Seniors Tour from '98. About 2005, that wall came up, and I think I felt I was lazy, and I just had trouble making myself practice, and out there on the putting green for an hour and a half, and out on the practice fairway for 2 hours and all that. I used to love doing it, and I could stay there all day doing it, but I hit that wall. The wall came up and said, I don't want to do that. And if you can't do that, chip around the putting green and have a short game ready. If you don't do it, you suffer out in the tournaments. You haven't got the confidence when you got to pitch it over a bunker, or it's a tight lie, and it's that's all that sort of stuff, and all those negative thoughts pop in, and you only need one of them and you're gone. So I decided that's it. I tried to play a little bit. I wanted to try and help the senior tour here in Australia, who were in their infancy, and I played for 2 years or 3 years, not I never even won once. They're pro-ams, really.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at that in my heyday. But it was a matter of playing with sponsors and getting them in and getting them going, getting the tour going, which is running quite reasonably now. They're playing for a few bob. But then I'm not practising, so I'm not going to have a decent score. I have, as you know, have much more fun playing here at the club and playing, you know, I could lose $40 in 20 cents and $2, which I get nervous about doing that now, you know, but it's fun. If I hit a bad shot, so be it. We all have a bit of a swear and a laugh and just see that, and then they get told shut up and get on with it. And that's the way it is. That's the love of golf.
Yeah.
And you never know what's around the corner. The next shot, or 2 shots down the track, could be a shot that I'd hit in 1975.
Yeah.
But
The beauty of golf.
Yeah, I won't duplicate it though.
You only need the one shot, don't you?
Yeah, well, you usually hit 1 or 2, or I do, usually hit 1 or 2 in a round where you think, oh, that was good, you know.
It's interesting what you say about promoting the tour. You're a life member of the PGA, aren't you, Bob? Have I
Yeah,
got that
life
right?
member of...
And I presume that was for services rendered?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny thing because that was from the tour, life member of the tour, but then they amalgamated, so I'm a life member of the PGA.
Well deserved as well.
Yeah.
You're synonymous with Southern Golf Club,
Yes,
Bob.
yeah.
What does the club mean to you?
I think you should ask my wife that.
I might write to her.
No, the club means everything to me, Cleggy.
Yeah.
I think it's 54 years now. I'm bloody glad I've been alive that long for a start, but to be able to play golf here for that long has been an absolute privilege. And I sincerely think that it's been a two-way street. It was when I turned pro, there was no such thing as a pro being a member of a golf club in Melbourne or around here.
No.
And Southern was the first club to do that. And I remember David Lucas was the captain, and David Lucas took out of the constitution that professionals cannot be members. A professional walked through with the joining fee and his fee, sign there. And we got a few when that first happened. I think we had about 8 pros members, because pros like to do it. They've got sort of 6 days at their club, and they like to come and just have a hit and play with different people.
Yeah.
And that happened, and I think it caused other clubs to do it, and that was the first thing. I mean, the only thing I haven't been here is an associate member, but a lot of people said I should be. And you know, honorary member, playing professional. I had Southern on my golf bag all the time in the United States and Australia and Southern Golf Club. And then at one stage there, I'm proud to say, Trevor Oliver was being the manager at the time, in between managers. He took over for a while it happened, and he rang me in the United States and said, it's when we first changed with the new 9, and he said, we're not going well. He said, I've got a favour to ask. Can we use your name in advertising? And I said, go for it, mate. Yeah. If it helps, go for it.
Absolutely.
And it was Join Bob's club, and it worked. The club came back better, and when I came home that year, I told Trevor I'll pay full fees, and he said, no, you don't know. I said, yes, I do. I want to do it. And I probably paid it for about 5 years, and the captain of the time, or the president of the time, said, well, it's off now. And I said, no, I'm happy to pay.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it's off. You're back to being an honorary member, and it wasn't that longer later that I had the greatest of honours, was life member.
Well, Bob, this club, you've given more to this club than this club would ever be able to give to you. It's a privilege having you as a member here, and I just hope today's generation of golfers and future generations of golfers remember what your contribution to this club has been.
Yeah, I must say, you know, I look at the players of this day and age and look at the people, you know, I never won a major championship. I was probably a little bit of a journeyman, but I did win 25 golf tournaments, and not just the Wangaratta, you know, Classic or whatever it was. They were golf tournaments.
Yeah.
that were worthwhile tournaments, which makes me feel I probably finished second twice as many times. I'm not a person to take those stats down. Some people can tell you how many times they ran first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I don't know. But it all started from here, and it's still here. And Kathy knows that. Yeah. Kathy knew that when she married me, that it was part of my life. And I've never met a better bunch of people, and I've met a lot of people over the years around the world. Never met a better bunch of people that are the guys at Southern and the girls. It's been what we started earlier about what happened in the pennant. I'd love to see that now and chase people following the pennant, but that's another story. But Southern has lived up to its name since I've been here, and I've got no doubt it'll carry on that way, and it's great to see it doing well in this day and age.
Bob, it's been the most fascinating interview this. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you very much.
More than